It's interesting to hear back to where it all started. We had an idea. We wanted to just start because we had been putting it off for a while. And the theme that we were centering around was definitely us and who we are. But the podcast has evolved as we've been continuing to have these conversations together.
Where we started, what you thought we were doing was making a podcast about an idea that I've had for several years surrounding a project that I called Make, Create, Build. We were really coming to recording thinking about a maker show of projects, or what do we like to make, more in like arts and crafts or like woodworking for me, right?
Right. Or like crafts for me, gardening, puzzling, things like that.
Yeah. And what we found was it's close, but not exactly what we're going for. And I think you can hear, even though what we thought we were trying to do was kind of happening, you can see where we're going and how we're moving towards talking about what the podcast is actually going to be about after the initial few recordings. It felt like we were kind of putting ourselves in a smaller box before, and this gives us a little more room to do what we like to do, which is explore, learn, grow. And that's kind of where I see us going, is talking about the things that maybe get in our way as we lean into uncomfortable growth. It kind of became apparent as we kept recording that we were talking about what are these things that are tripping us up, whether it's starting this podcast or other projects.
So when you're in residence as an artist, a writer, a musician, you're there digging deep and tapping into your creativity. And when you're in residency as a doctor, you're learning and practicing and honing your crafts. I see in residence us doing that via conversation. I also think we'll probably get to the creativity and the making topics because we're whole people, right? We aren't just individuals that are pursuing projects and things, trying to figure out how to navigate things in our way, but we're also tapping into that creativity on a daily, weekly, monthly basis because it's what makes us whole. We'll probably have some of that woven throughout our conversations because it's who we are. Now we show up.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the first recording we did.
Sounds good.
All right. I'll see you at the end.
Sounds good.
All right. Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
How are we going to do this?
I don't know. I don't know how to start a podcast, but I've always wanted to for some reason.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your journey to coming to being, so I always say when people ask kind of what you do, I say you're a maker.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, if it's okay if I kind of tell you how I unpack it, is that you're really a creative at heart, that we were both music majors. And after graduating from college, you went into guitar building and repair, and you've worked in a cabinet shop for a number of years and working with your hands in wood, and you're incredibly gifted at artistic things around music or graphics or things like that. And so you're a maker at heart.
Right.
And that encompasses a lot of of making, creating, and building things. So I don't know if you want, we're just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, no, it's good. So yeah, you introduced me as a maker, and I grew up listening to lots of music and music major, but never really, that's just how I expressed myself, kind of almost personally, like really like kind of insular, right? But never really found a community until later, like with seeing other people on YouTube or podcasts, that other people felt the same way about making things or building things. And I didn't really know, I thought of like playing guitar and making music was more of like, it was like something I was like just pulled to do, like not a calling, but maybe like it was just, I was compelled to do it. It made me feel good. It was like the sweet spot. Whereas like, as our relationship like started to blossom and grow, we got a house after and getting married, you start to learn that you need to maintain the house or fix things. It's just the feeling you get from, finishing the basement, or when I went back to build guitars, right? Like, I didn't have a background in construction or really building anything besides Lego. Like, that's creative and it's fun. But I grew into building things with my hands a little more, woodworking, because it was necessary. But then, like, from it, there's a sense of satisfaction of being able to, like, do it yourself, like you said. So being able to do it yourself is like kind of a sense of freedom to me. And I hadn't felt that before. I played guitar. I like to sing. So I kind of stumbled into it because we ended up sending me back to school to learn how to build guitars. And I found like it was almost meditative trying to be precise on that level of like millimeters. And it's something I had never really done outside of written word and schoolwork. Something drew me to the community I found on YouTube of these makers, like the guys on the Making It podcast. So Jimmy DeRessa, Bob Clagett, David Picciuto, they're on the Making It podcast. Listening to those guys talk, I mean, it's kind of like I wonder if that's like why I'm wanting to start this podcast.
Talk about what you're doing right now with creating. It's a little different than building guitars or building cabinetry and doing woodworking. Yeah.
So I went from learning how to build guitars, which is a certain level of fine woodworking, right? Building acoustic guitars, mandolins, handcrafted electric guitars, right? And then going into having to find work. And well, now I have a new appreciation for woodworking, right? So, go to a cabinet shop and pay the bills, right? Well, that lasted for a while, but it's not the same. But I learned a lot of great skills of building. But now, fast forward several years, and I'm editing video, making like YouTube shorts, kind of self-taught in graphic design. Like art has always been something I've gravitated towards, but didn't have maybe the raw talent or the ability to pursue the means to develop skills in artistic or traditionally artistic avenue, right? Like, I'm not a great drawer. My brain gravitates towards using Adobe Illustrator to create graphics. Being able to like grab my phone and make something, if I can't get to the computer, I can make something that can just go out and like reach people, I guess, and so I was doing that. And that turned into me saying like, I kind of know how to edit videos. Like, so more of a digital creator now, and working back towards getting back into some guitar stuff or woodworking, just because it's a different type of satisfaction. Not being sitting at the computer, moving around a little more, being a little more physically active, and like something tangible in your hand versus something that's just mostly digital on a screen, which it still gives me like satisfaction seeing something I've made, whether it's physical, tangible, you can touch it, or digital and just in the internet, So more of like making something that other people, it either affects them, helps them, or just for yourself. What about you? All those things that you said. Ask yourself those questions. I'm so bad. No.
So I know when we were talking about this idea of doing a podcast last weekend and actually started getting a little more serious about, let's set a day and actually record, even if we don't fully know what it is that we want to do, or what it's going to look like, or what the format is, or what we're going to talk about. We were talking a lot about kind of where we come to make, create, and build. For me, one of the things that has always been something that I've valued, I think, is creativity. And so, as I've been thinking about it, that's something that is just this part of me that started from when I was really young. And so I come to this creating and making space really from growing up with a mom in particular who is incredibly creative and artistic. She rose malls and rose malled a lot. growing up. We were always doing a craft project of some kind in the house. We would go to craft sales, and my sister and I would always come up with something, whether it's making jewelry or making candles or dipping pine cones in wax as fire starters. We spent so many winters in the garage dipping pine cones in wax and selling them for $3 at the local craft sale, right before Thanksgiving for folks to give as Christmas presents, that it's just baked into kind of who I am. My mom, too, was part of a craft club, that a group of local ladies who would always every month have a different craft project, and they go house to house, month to month. And the craft project, I know she would always say that everyone would start out with the same materials and the same concept and the same thing they were building, but everyone's thing ended up being different and unique. And I always thought that was just super powerful, right? That you could take one thing and there wasn't a perfect one way that something would be done. That you could take the same materials and everyone's personality could come through in that outcome or the product, so to speak. So, so that's really some of the reason why I'm really passionate about this. And I also think that there's something really special about being able to make something yourself. It's personal. It's not just something that everyone else has in their house. You can really there's just something special about being able to create something.
Something unique, right? Like,
yeah.
If you make it, it's uniquely yours.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, I appreciate that. It's interesting because I can't tell you, well, Keith, how many projects I have either going on or have done over the years. And probably if you were to look at the end product and how much time and money I put into doing some things, it probably would have been cheaper to run to, a big box store and just buy that off the shelf and, put it on your door before, the holidays or something. But there's just something really unique about being able to make your own.
When you get a project and you all start with the same materials, right? How at the outcome can be so unique and different. And that in itself it's beautiful, right? Like, not everybody has the same lens, right? They have a different technique, or they see those materials as something different and can make it differently. I need more of that perspective because my background was more of follow the directions, build the Lego how the Lego is said, and then you always break that and you play with that. But when it comes to other things, more structured things, right? Follow the rules, get a permit, or hire somebody to do it right. It has to be right. When you're creating something like music, I think that was where I found it can't be wrong. I mean, it can sound wrong, and like it cannot sound right, but that's personal preference. And so if somebody doesn't like something that I make, the sound coming out of my amplifier, right? I don't care if I like it. Whereas there are other things, whether it's a chair or a table, it can be wrong if it doesn't stay up or if you sit on it and it breaks. I like that you saying that. It's a good reminder to me to remember, like, you can take chances. You can have these materials and you can make whatever you want out of it. So I just wanted to reiterate that was in the back of my head there. So.
One thing that Keith said to me when we were preparing for this is that my roots might be in crafting, but it really has translated into me working with building and creating something a little less tangible than a product. Because now in my role, I'm actually working on building teams and building culture and creating things together. And so I think that's one thing that's interesting to me, is that outside of the office, I still have that creative flair where I want to be making the things that I can, even if it costs a little bit more with the supplies. I still want to dig in and make that wreath or make whatever project it is But I think the creativity doesn't just stop with a glue gun. It's also a little less tangible too in my day-to-day working life.
Yeah.
When we're thinking a little bit about the podcast and what we're trying to do and the value that we're trying to bring, I know you and I have talked quite a bit about the make, create, build, that concept, that idea. And while we were preparing, we found a document back from 2018 from a planning session that there was a piece that stood out to me that I just wanted to ask you about, because it's labeled my personal whys of why you want to do this.
Yeah.
Why is this important to you? And the why that you listed and that you had come up with was that you want to make a connection with like-minded people, to build a community, and to bring together a community of people to create art through music, writing, and making, to give people the opportunities and experience the power and fulfillment that they can feel through making something themselves. And so I wanted to kick it back to you and just get your thoughts about that. Why is that important to you? And what do you think that we can do through this podcast to help start bringing some of that alive, to create community through making?
Yeah. So the way I feel when I make something, or when I learned that I could make, let's say, a guitar, it's not something I was born feeling. Like, I thought you got guitars from a factory or the store, right? And so once I realized that I can have the power to make something, I can make a notebook out of paper and make a little pocket notebook if I want, even just something that simple. But to make a deck, to make bookcases that our family uses every day, to build a guitar that somebody can write a song on, or I can write a song on, that feeling, that fulfillment, that satisfaction, finding other like-minded people, right, that feel that same pull when they're being creative, building a community around that planning session where we talked through that stuff, that seems like a long time ago, and a lot of stuff has happened since then. And so to come back to it and rethink, like, okay, where did this originate from? It's nice to think about the reason I'm pulled to do this is to find a community. You know, I might say build a community, but it's more of like, not that I want to gain a bunch of people following me, but it's more of like communing with other people, right? Like, because we may be more connected because of the internet, right? But in some ways we're not. So it's like you got to reach out and find, a community, and whether it's art or music or writing, making with your hands, building with wood or metal, there's a real power in that I think can bring people together, and for people to share what they've made. There's something to be said to empower people that they can do it. And like you said, no matter what the materials are or what you start with, you can make something unique and your own. Yeah.
I think that's really important. And it's actually making me think too of things that may not be being made out of, say, wood or metal, because for me, it's a little different when I'm thinking about the garden, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, making and creating a garden is also having community around that. I can't tell you how many times I've been on, well, I think Instagram or YouTube or Pinterest, right? Trying to find the different ideas of how can I create this sort of thing? What can I make Keith build me to help my garden not be eaten by deer, right? Or a trellis so I can grow grapes and, things like that. So I think that also is just interesting because it's similar, but it's different, right?
Oh yeah. I may build with tangible things sometimes, like what like I talk about woodworking mostly for guitar building, or like bookcases for us, or like your parents or my parents, or just little things around the house. I thought you were going to talk about the more intangible things that you do daily for building teams and structures and things like that. So it's something I think we both think about, though, with in our daily lives with our kids. How are they going to grow and learn and interact in different systems and structures? And so don't necessarily have to talk about that, but I thought you were going to talk about how you build and create teams.
Yeah. And culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you went to gardening.
I did go to gardening.
But gardening to me seems very similar. So
you're right. It is similar because you end up with something very tangible, right? Either your tomatoes grow or they don't. The deer eat something or they don't.
Right.
Yeah. No, I wasn't, but I do think that's important. That's something that I realize is really important in what I do. Is around creating teams, building relationships, connecting ideas that may not necessarily be clearly connected. I always say that I love to have a huge empty whiteboard and a whole bunch of people around it, or lots and lots of Post-its and an empty wall that we can really tap into the wisdom of everyone that's in the room to create something truly extraordinary together. And what it looks like is always different depending on who's in the room. It's kind of like the different tools, right? That you come up with something unique and different and special based on who's at the table.
Well, and like whether we're talking about building that or building something out of wood or metal or beads or construction paper or a craft, what we're kind of here to talk about is on both things. It's like where's your mindset when you're approaching either, right? And how do you go about accomplishing what you're setting out to accomplish? And I go about it a real different way than you.
Yeah.
I overanalyze. I get in my own way. I stop myself because I'm afraid to fail. That's where I come from, and I'm working on that. Whereas you kind of are ready, fire, aim. And we kind of we can be like oil and water sometimes, but we complement each other too, where you help me light a fire under me of, hey, let's get it done when it just needs to get done, where maybe if I can really get the paralysis analysis. And so you really help me get on with it. And I'm not quite sure what I bring to you, except for, hey, maybe slow down and it'll work out better. But that's my viewpoint, where you might be like, why don't you just sit over there and leave me alone?
No, I do think the one thing that you bring to me is you help me realize that I don't always need to take on all the things that I'm trying to take on at once. It made me think of a story, and I know I've shared this with you, but I always say that I've taken a little after my grandma Doris. And so my grandma Doris was an amazingly creative woman, and she would, she wanted to try something. She was known for just going all in and just trying it, right? So she wanted to be a painter and do watercoloring. She joined a class and she went ahead and she was a watercolor, painting person. Or she wanted to have company over. She was doing some of the things where you would think, why is she doing that now? Like she, would want to be painting a wall before company was coming. I see it in something where I'm always saying to you, like, okay, so this is the project we should be doing right before. And you will say, is that really the thing we should be doing right now? I'm like, no, but we can make it all happen. But anyway, the story I was thinking about was, I remember there was one Christmas we went over to my grandma Doris's house, and she lived in a little farmhouse up in rural Wisconsin. And we, got there and you could smell all the beautiful smells. All the presents were getting put under the tree and everyone was kind of piling in. And when it came down to it, she was trying to figure out, okay, can somebody thread this sewing machine because we have to sew up the Santa suit? And it was, everybody was coming in and everything went off without a hitch. But, she was creating in the midst of the thing. So I think I have a tendency to sometimes do that, where I have the confidence to just say, you know what? let's try it. What's the worst thing that happens is it just doesn't work out. And so sometimes that works well. It could also end in not having anything to show for your efforts in the end. But I've always, like you said, not been afraid to just jump in and see how it works.
Yeah. You can always learn. It may seem like a failure, but there's always something to learn.
Yeah.
And that's something I have to remind myself of so that I don't prevent myself from starting.
So I think that might be a really great place to transition. So I thought it might be fun to come up with a question just to ask that Keith doesn't know what question it's going to be.
Oh, no.
So I can get his honest reaction. I actually asked ChatGPT what question I should ask about creativity. So Keith?
All right, I'll read it here.
You ready?
Hang it up. Okay. What are some effective ways to overcome creative blocks and generate new ideas? Okay. Wow. Listen to podcasts.
Thank you, ChatGPT.
Yeah, thank you, ChatGPT. What are some effective ways to overcome creative blocks and generate new ideas? Just got to start. You're not blocked. You're afraid it's not good enough. And it's not going to be good enough unless you make something bad first. That is what I've learned. It's still hard to do, but you got to just keep doing it. How about you, Laura? What do you think?
I think for me, one way to overcome creative blocks and generate new ideas is to change the scenery. And I'm thinking about this when I was writing my dissertation in particular, or I'm writing a big
humble brag.
No, not a humble brag, but just the reality of something that I went through when I was writing that, or writing a large report or a grant or something like that. There's inevitably some time that you get to a point where you just go, oh my goodness, I have no more left. I can't figure out where to go with this. And so for me, creativity, some of it is just getting up, changing the scenery, picking up your laptop or whatever you're working on if you can, and moving to a different location, getting outside, going to a coffee shop, going to the kitchen table if you're somewhere else. But I think that's one of the biggest things for me is changing the scenery.
It's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I like that. Nice question.
Thanks.
That was a mystery question. I like it.
I like surprising you.
Good. Keep it coming.
Will do.
All right. Any final thoughts? Or what felt good? What didn't feel good?
With the podcast?
Yeah. Did anything feel like I said humble brag and I thought that was funny? But did that throw you off?
No, it didn't throw me off.
All right.
So the one thing I think feels strange or not good, or I don't even know if it's not good.
Yeah.
But I think in general, one thing when I've thought about doing a podcast about putting myself out there, it feels it's one area that I've always edited myself or held myself back from jumping in and doing. And it's similar to social media. And like what I've done, I overthink it. I overprocess it. So I think what actually is a little funny is some of the creative stuff that you see me jumping into. I think that I feel more vulnerable doing a podcast or social media than I do in my creative life. The stuff I create.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is.
What do you mean you don't know what that is?
I don't know exactly what that vulnerability is, or feeling a little unsure about it, or uncomfortable.
I think it's just human nature. Like putting yourself out there on social media or a podcast. Like if we're looking to get listeners or views, right? Then if you don't get those, then it feels like it's a rejection of you.
But see, I don't know if that's it for me.
Right. But you're showing yourself, in a way that it's vulnerable. I'm just saying like the metrics can also exacerbate that. I'm not saying that's what we're going for. I'm saying this is an intimate way to communicate with people. I mean, when I listen to podcasts, I feel like I'm hanging out with the people that I listen to.
Yeah.
They don't know me though, but it is an intimate conversation you're having with somebody on a level, you know.
Sure.
And so there is a vulnerability there, talking to potentially a lot of different people. Whereas, like, I mean, that's the same with the thing though too is like you're a very good piano player and vocalist, and so you've been on stages in front of hundreds of people,
yeah,
and you don't miss a note, and so I get a little stage fright if I have to perform in front of people. This is kind of a performance, right?
Yeah.
But getting to the point where it's more conversational and like we're doing it right now, and it's not as scary, I think, as it maybe was prior.
Right.
It's still, you know, there's always room to improve. There's always something to learn. And that's kind of the point, right? Is the process is the point. And so actually going from never having done this to doing it right now is harder than us going from 1 to 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next time it's just like, oh yeah, we've done that. Now it's just we're gonna improve or stagnate, right? But it's not like going from 0 to 1.
I think there's something like, it's so interesting because I want to be part of a community.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what you said. I don't want to build it and have the community be mine, but I do want to create a community that values creativity and making.
Yeah. Yeah, we want to be part of a community that values creating and building like we do.
Yep.
And just having a place to share space, right?
Right. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So as we're trying to figure out kind of our segment type things, that I thought we could talk about maybe one project that you're doing right now that you're excited about.
Okay. You want me to go first?
Yeah.
This podcast. Yeah. Aside from this podcast, I don't really have this has been in the forefront of my mind for like the last week. If I said working on an instrument, I'd almost feel like I was lying because I'm not actively in the project. I'm just trying to get like the gumption up to start building an instrument again. So maybe that's the accountability factor I need is to talk about wanting to do that. Because that's a good project for me to be more up, active, and using my hands. I guess besides the podcast, because this is fun to try to navigate this and execute on it, something that I can be comfortable with. But another one would be working on a guitar or an instrument. How about you?
So I think I have two things. So one is it is that time of year that I am starting seeds. And so I've taken over the kitchen with all of my little seed containers. So I have peppers and tomatoes and different vegetables and lavender and different things that are starting to sprout up. So that's really exciting for me.
Yeah.
When the snow is still on the ground outside in April, it's nice to see a little green inside. So that's fun. And then the other thing I'm excited about, I've been working on this puzzle, which I know you know about.
Yeah,
Keith.
it's been on the table for about a month.
And I'm so close to having it be done. So I'm working on, I love puzzling, and I am almost, gosh, I probably only have about 50 pieces of 1,000. It's all the little tiny Lego heads is what the puzzle is of. And you have to look at every single face of every single Lego guy and find exactly where it is in the puzzle. So it's this huge grid-like thing, and it is past time for it to be completed and put back in the box.
Cool. Well, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get it finished this weekend.
I hope so. So I have one more question for you too.
Yeah.
So you and I, one thing we share in common is we like to learn a lot and grow and consume quite a bit of content. Is there something that you're reading or listening to or being exposed to that is really exciting right now or that is really resonating with you?
Oh boy. I mean, I could go on for a long time. I listen to lots of podcasts and I listen to audiobooks. So I'm super excited for Seth Godin's new book to come out, The Song of Significance. And he had like a little virtual meeting just to kind of talk about it a little bit. And so I'm really excited for that to come out. I think it comes out in May. But any of his books, The Icarus Deception, The Practice, This is Marketing, there's a ton. Anything, I kind of go back to him all the time. So I'm always kind of in the Akimbo podcast with Seth Godin also. But other than that, having a really hard time. Like, you don't have an idea of something, right, from me?
No, just you answer the question.
Yeah.
Just one thing you're really excited about. You listed like 5.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
You're an overachiever, honey.
No, I just feel like there's always something. New Metallica record's coming out soon, too. I'm excited about that. All right, Laura, what's something that you're excited about?
Oh, goodness. This was my original question, wasn't it? I should have thought about that. Can we swear on our podcast?
Fuck yeah.
Okay. No.
It's up to you. Yeah, we can.
Okay. So the book that I'm reading right now, it's called How to Be a Fucking Lady. And it is really great. It's all about style at any size. And so it's a really interesting book and I'm really enjoying it. And she's really funny and it talks a lot about how to lead with gumption and being confident and how to live life like a boss. So it's pretty exciting. I like it.
Awesome. That sounds great. Should we just be done for now?
Mm-hmm.
And see what I can scrape out of the edit?
How bad do you think it'll be?
Pretty bad.
You think so?
Yeah, it's gotta be bad for it's good.
All right. Is that somebody's quote up there? Make things better by making better things?
Yeah, that's Seth Godin.
Ah.
Oh yeah. That's Seth Godin. That's complete. It's something like this. It's all Seth Godin.
Do the extro. How do you say that?
Outro.
Do the outro, honey.
Right. Thanks for joining us for our first podcast episode, and we hope to see you back for the next one.
See you next time.
Okay. You're really good at speaking very eloquently and clearly. So,
well, I don't know about that. Some of that has to do with my my experience and my education, with my evaluation studies background for my doctorate.
Oh, we're throwing that out there?
Yeah, better call me Dr. Laura.
Dr. Laura, okay.
Just kidding.
She's not that kind of doctor.
No. That's like, as the kids say, not the kind of the doctor that helps people.
Right. That's hilarious.
After 9 years, that's kind of a blow to say that I don't help people.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Can we swear on our podcast?
Fuck yeah.